You know, history is absolutely filled with ghosts. Not ghosts of people, but of entire civilizations. We look at their incredible ruins, we study these amazing things they accomplished, and we're always left with the same big question. What happened? What went wrong? People have been debating this forever, but today we're going to dig into one author's very specific and, yeah, pretty provocative theory that claims to connect them all.
I mean, that's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? Why do these massive powerhouses of human creativity, these empires that look like they would last forever, why do they just crumble into dust?
I mean, think about ancient Egypt, a civilization that lasted for thousands of years. They were a beacon of stability. They gave us the pyramids. And yet, eventually, their time ran out.
Or, of course, the big one, the Roman Empire. Its impact on law, on government, on engineering, it literally shaped the world we live in today. And its collapse was so total, so complete, that we are still trying to figure out exactly how it all went down.
And this isn't just a story from Europe or the Middle East. Look at the Mayans. Their incredible cities were just abandoned, swallowed by the jungle. So what's the deal? What's the common thread here?
Well, according to the author we're looking at today, the fatal flaw isn't some enemy at the gates or a crazy natural disaster. Nope, it's something that grows from the inside. A kind of sickness of the soul, you could say.
And here's the heart of the diagnosis. It's a total paradox. The very things that make a civilization great, scientific breakthroughs, human ingenuity, incredible technology, those things eventually plant the seeds of its own destruction. They lead to this fatal arrogance, this belief that we are the ultimate power, that there's no heaven above heaven. In other words, they start to think they're gods.
This is the tipping point. The author argues that when a civilization gets to the place where it thinks we're God, we can do whatever we want, that's the beginning of the end. It starts trying to control everything, destroying others, and, in the end, destroying itself.
So if that's the disease, what's the cure? Well, according to this author, it's not a long list of options. There is only one single, absolute way to prevent this from happening. The argument is that for a civilization to last, it needs an eternal anchor. It needs a constant belief in what's translated here as the greatest creator. Now, this isn't just some vague spiritual feeling. It's a really specific idea, a single, supreme authority that keeps a civilization humble and reminds it that it is not the master of the universe.
And the main example the author brings up to prove this point is the United States. They point right to this phrase, "In God we trust," as the key spiritual anchor that powered the nation's rise. In the author's view, this isn't just some motto on a dollar bill, it's a constant national-level reminder that there is a higher authority.
And that's the bottom line here. The moment a civilization stops trusting in that higher power and starts trusting only in itself, well, it puts itself on the exact same path as all those fallen empires that came before. It is a really stark warning.
Okay, but this brings up a pretty obvious question, right? Does it have to be this one specific belief? What about other kinds of faith? Well, the author is super clear on this, and the answer is pretty exclusive.
So could a civilization survive by believing in a whole pantheon of gods? Like the ancient Greeks or the Romans did?
The author's answer is a hard no. The argument laid out is that if you look at history, all the civilizations with lots of gods, they all collapsed. So why is that? See, the author makes this huge distinction between the greatest creator and what they call gods. In this way of thinking, gods, like the ones from the Greek or Roman pantheons, are lesser, flawed beings. They're always fighting with each other, and according to this source, they're way too busy with their own drama to offer humanity any real, lasting protection.
All right, so if a bunch of gods is out, what about a totally different spiritual path? One that isn't focused on gods in quite the same way, like Buddhism.
The author pretty much dismisses this idea with a very blunt proverb. A clay Buddha crossing a river can't even save itself. The point being, how can something that's fragile itself protect anyone else? The argument here is that Buddhism is focused on an individual's enlightenment for the next life, not on saving a worldly civilization in this one. And this is where the whole thing stops being about ancient history and becomes a direct message for right now, for us. This author isn't just giving a history lesson, they're sounding an alarm for our modern, global world. To describe what happens when a civilization gets this arrogant, the author brings up this ancient concept of the Great Threat. And we're not talking about an asteroid or a war. This is described as a force that's beyond our imagination, something we can't control, that shows up when humanity loses all respect and fear for anything bigger than itself.
So in the end, we're left with what the author presents as a very simple, very stark choice. Path 1. Humanity puts the greatest creator first, stays humble, and enters a new golden age. Path 2. We ignore that ultimate authority, keep trusting only in ourselves, and risk calling down this great threat.
And that's what this whole theory leaves us with. It's a deep and honestly a pretty unsettling question for our own time. It forces us to look at our amazing, modern, tech-filled world and ask, in all of our success, have we forgotten that there might be a heaven above heaven? And if this one author is right, what's the price we might pay for that kind of arrogance?